All right, thanks everyone for joining me today. We have three special guests with us, Ashley, Jacey, and Charlene. And we're having this discussion. Actually, it was many months ago that I thought it would be really nice to hear from people from Gen Z. And this was after a discussion I had with our social media officer, Erin. And I felt just really convicted that your generation is not just the future of our church, but your current vital church members, servants, and leaders in the various capacities where you guys are serving. And I think I just really have interest to hear what life is like for you guys in your 20s, because you're all 20, right? Okay, so I just I was trying to think, oh, what's something we can talk about to, I guess, break the ice. So I'll start by asking those who have finished college, do you miss college? And if you're not finished with college, are you looking forward to your first full-time job? So we'll start with Jacey. You can start. Do you miss college or do you like life as it is now?
I don't miss college because I do not enjoy studying as much as working.
Uh-huh.
So I think I was always looking forward to working more so than being in school. I do miss being around like friends and just classmates and being able to like study together and just spend that time. But I definitely do not miss studying.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sounds about right. So you fit in now, right?
Yeah.
All right. How about you, Charlene?
I think I miss the fellowship aspect of college. Like
Yeah.
trip was really fun, and I think that was like a highlight of my week, every week in college. But I
Aw.
also don't miss the studying. But I also am still studying, so I'm just if I feel like if I was done with studying, then I would like post grad life way better than college life. But because I am still studying, it's kind of like just add on full time to college, which is worse.
Yeah,
So
because
I
you're
don't
just
know.
busy now.
Yeah, I'm just busy now. And
Yeah.
every single day is just like 9 to 5, then study, and then yeah, do life. So
Yeah.
yeah, it is nice though. It's nice to not be in college and like study full time, Like at least I'm doing like study part time.
Yeah, you're not a professional student right
Yeah,
now.
no more.
Okay, we'll talk about work a little bit later, but let's go to Ashley. Are you looking forward to graduating or are you like relishing it in your college years?
I feel like I haven't thought about that just because I feel like I am working while I'm in school, just because I get the experience of what I will be doing after I graduate. But I definitely probably will be looking forward to not having to study after I like pass my board exam and everything.
Okay, all right. Okay, so there's so many things we can talk about today. Um, let's start off with, I think, a harder question. This question was proposed by our social media officer, and he wanted to ask about identity and womanhood. And I guess the question that I'll ask you guys is, can you identify any ways in which role models in your life or the church has influenced the way that you see your identity as a woman, or even in your transition throughout, since you guys, I think, grew up almost at our church where you went through, many youthful life stages. So this is kind of like a hard question, I think.
I think for me, just growing up at FCBC pretty much throughout my entire life, I think it has played a big role. And even if I don't remember every single instance of and everything that I learned, it's still those people who did faithfully serve and just the preaching, the teaching week in,
Mhm.
week out that has shaped what I do believe that they are able to point me back to the truth every time, even if I was not listening or did not remember it. But I think just even that slowly just molding, it just molded my faith through just faithful leaders, even if they're not directly in my lives. And just even by their example, I think seeing older people serve and just how they live their day to day life is, and how even they react and respond to different trials or situations. That's what also helped, I guess, grow me in my faith in that way.
Cool. Thanks. So you're saying the examples of both men and women. So not just, it wasn't just limited to older women. It was like just a bigger picture of the body of Christ or
I
families.
think in the way that, well, godliness is not exclusive to men and women, but there are like more specific examples of like, oh, how did do women, and what are the distinctions that God has created man and woman. That's where you can find those like differences and learn from, well, in being a woman, I learned from women of how they are women of God, but godliness, I think it is both of, there are faithful men and women that you can see their example and just learn by.
Cool, that's helpful.
I think for me, one, I mean, there's a lot of examples, but one specific one, I think the most impactful um, moment in time from at least like high school to college was Unicoi when we had small groups. Joyce was our counselor at that time. She doesn't come to FCBC anymore, but I think I learned a lot from like just an older sister being in my life and like being able to talk to all my problems. And like me and Joyce, we're completely different people. So like we may not necessarily agree on everything specifically, but at least like the way that she helped me think through a lot of like different aspects of my faith, of high school, of like the trials that I went through, just thinking it through it in a biblical manner really helped me to think through things, for example, in college in a biblical manner, like building up all those disciplines of like how do you respond to like stress? How do you respond to like heartbreak? How do you learn to like love God even in like the small moments in time, like not just like in your devos, but also throughout the day, and like how to memorize scripture and just all these different like ways of learning more about God and living in a Christ-like manner. I learned a lot from Joyce, especially from high school. And then I think that was like the biggest transition in terms of like womanhood. Like I think that was like high school to college was when I really like understood like what does it really mean to be like a biblical woman in the midst of the secular world.
Yeah, mentorship is really, really important in those younger years. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
What about you, Ashley?
I think just adding on to like what Shar says, in like small group, but I think just thinking back to how like growing up, whether that be like having like aunties that are still at our church today that I've like grown up either being counseled or was like even like somebody that guided me through like VBS, whether it be like during like a gospel sharing or altar call, I think like plays an impact because whether or not like they still remember like what they taught me, I think seeing how they interact and grow has helped me better understand like the transition between like childhood to high school and now in college. Just getting their guidance and their feedback on like how do you continue growing in different aspects, at least from like different stages of life. So
Oh, yeah, I like that you mentioned that church aunties it's a loaded statement. Church aunties contribute a lot of the church influence, and even if your own mother, you know, attends your church, I mean, it's the full picture of like all those aunties that come into your life and expand the image of God in their own love and care as well. Okay, let's talk about the transition that an individual goes through in their 20s. And I think a lot of the biggest transitions can happen in your 20s and maybe not, but they would be transitions of, finishing one degree or two or a doctor's degree, or maybe going through multiple graduate programs. Some move away and relocate for the first time for a job opportunity, and some people keep a job, or some people move on to several jobs in their 20s. I think now the trend is more like you tend to have more jobs within that first 10 years. Some people get engaged like you, Shar, and make those preparations for marriage. And then if you're fast, you can pop out a kid before you turn 30. I'm not saying I'm not saying that about you. I'm just saying some people are fast, and some people become parents in their 20s. And then for others, they're looking to buy their first big purchase of a car or a home. And so I think that these are really big things to think about. And I wanted to ask you guys how you feel about your next 5 years or 10 years. You'll be in your 20s. And what are your thoughts? I'm sorry, this question's really big. I guess as you consider like the next 5 years of your life, or some of these transitions that you do want to make, like what comes to your mind? Like, what are your thoughts about it?
In terms of transitions, I think I took a lot of transitions like at once. Was it a good idea? I don't know. We'll see. But I think specifically coming out of college was one big transition. So I graduated last year, and then I already had a full-time offer before I graduated. So I was like, I didn't really have to like go out and find jobs. So I think graduating college wasn't that big of a transition because there was no like post-grad anxiety that a lot of people have when they don't have a job. I think that's one big transition that people have to go through, at least like young adults. But I didn't have to do that. But I think it was when I started working after that summer of graduation that I was like, oh man, like this is very different from what I'm used to for like the past 21 years. I think there is a lot of expanding of my bubble. So I think from high school, I was in a very small bubble. And then in college, that bubble became a little bigger. But then in work, it's like the like huge. I'm like, oh my gosh, what the heck? Like all my coworkers, they're awesome and everything, but you can see there's a big distinction between how I live and how they live, which is completely fine. Like they can live how they want to live. I will live how I want to live. But I think just being exposed to that is something very like it takes time to get used to. I'm still getting used to it now, like figuring out what I want to share with them and what I don't want to share with them. How do I be like a good Christian, a good light to them, even at work. I think that is just like a big transition in general. But I guess like one thing I learned from that transition was that I do fear man a lot. In college, I feared man in terms of like, oh, what did people think about me? Like how I look, or like, am I skinny enough? Or like, am I pretty enough? But then in college, it was like, oh, am I smart enough? Like, can I get an internship? Can I get a job? And then at work, it's like even more. And I'm just like, I thought like I got over certain fears of man, but I realized that fear of man will always stay like it's always something that I will always struggle with. So yeah, it's like, what do people think of me? Not in in terms of like success, but me as a Christian, like me as a Christian woman in the workforce. Like, I wonder if my coworkers think like, oh, like she's different because she doesn't like get drunk or like, oh, she
Mhm.
doesn't do all these things. Um, but anyways, that itself was like a transition. And then like I'm getting married. So that was another transition, a big transition. So I feel like there's just a lot of transitions this year. But I think I'm grateful for it because I see how God is stretching me in these ways. Sure, I could have taken my time and not have to like grow so fast, but also like, like you just go. And you just live life.
I like that.
You just go where God takes you and you're here for the ride.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of big realities. I think the
Mhm.
working world, the real world. I think, were you talking about like contrasting values with the people that you meet in the workforce? Or were you talking about
Mhm.
different like life stages?
Values. The way that people
Values.
live, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
very different.
yeah. All right. Well, um, let's see. I do want to just comment that I like if you know that you want to commit to something, you commit to it wholeheartedly. So I'm happy for you. I'm happy that you and John, your fiance, are moving forward. It's a good thing. You guys are moving forward to a good thing.
Yay!
All right. How about the rest of you? What do you guys think about your upcoming transitions?
I think for me, just like thinking ahead, I think like kind of what comes to mind is a lot of like uncertainty in some ways. I know like a lot of people can keep like give me assurance like, oh, you'll definitely get a job just because like healthcare workers are like on the need everywhere
Mhm.
and like oh, you don't have to worry about anything like that. But I think what comes to mind is not worry about getting a job, but it's more so like kind of living like independently. I think right now,
Mhm.
because I am well, being a college student and not dorming and not everything, I think I feel very secure at home. Um, like I come home and I have like my parents waiting and all these other things. So I think just thinking ahead, there's a lot of like stepping out of my own like bubble to like explore and like prepare myself for the real world because I think not thinking about it is not a bad thing, but I think it can come faster than you think. But as much as like my parents allow me to kind of, like have my own space and freedom to like do whatever I want, I think just being home and having to sometimes be around them versus like seeing how
Mhm.
people on campus can like have their own independence and like live a different type of life in college is kind of like very different in some aspect. Like I think part of me just says like, oh, I wish I had that, but I definitely think it is gonna be a big challenge if like depending on where God leads me after I graduate and the changes that it will take or what I will have to kind of face in order to like overcome those like different like I don't know how to describe it, but like blockage or like kind of stepping stones to get me where I need to be.
Hmm. Yeah, that's another big theme, like transitioning towards like independence. I think like it's not just like financial independence and getting your job and being able to support yourself financially. I think it's all those other aspects of growing up. It's like personal responsibility. And, if you're living at home, I'm not calling anyone out, but it's easy for your parents to take care of your chores like laundry or I mean they're feeding you because they're less busy than you. And yeah, those are all things I think you feel really adult like when you have to do all of that for yourself. So yeah, I think that's a big theme in this transition. And it's we're all still growing up, learning the next thing, next skill that we need for ourselves. All right. Anything, Jacey?
I think the biggest transition was probably college to postgrad, where leaving turf and just even just different ministry. I think I just enjoy my comfort, so any change is hard. Um, so I think for the first time, like after this year, I had just a break of ministry, just of everything, and just I think time for to just yeah, I just had extra time compared to usual because I think in college and everything, I just like keeping myself busy. So I'm always working and going to school, and then there's ministry, and on top of that. So I think I just like in that transition, I needed rest, and I just realized the importance of it. What does it really mean? And to just trust God and just even uh, my future plans because I can't plan for 5 years. If you ask me what I want to do in 5 years, I can't tell you.
Oh no, I wasn't
She's gonna
asking.
start her sticker store. That's what she's gonna do.
Yes. um, let's see. But I think like for big picture things, like I think just even looking back to high school and everything, it's silly to see like what you do like prioritize then, and then now it's like, oh, there's so much more to life, and those things that I cared about in high school don't matter now. Um, but I think just like in this period of time, and I lost my train of thought. I think just like work, and even the idea of how can or should I stay here or like if I should go like apply. I think that's like also another transition that was hard of oh like because I enjoy my comfort so much, like should I just stay here and like stay where I am? Um, but yeah, I think it's been like a interesting hard transition that I'm just learning and going through. Um, yeah.
Yeah, it's I resonate with what you're sharing about like all of these decisions are up to you now, right? Like how you invest your time and how to create structure and, routines and commitments, but also to prioritize the important commitments of, resting and making time for God and, all those important spiritual disciplines. It's hard because now you have the freedom to make all those decisions. I think that's one of the hardest things about adulthood, honestly, is like how do you fill your days and live wisely with your resources of time and, other things. Okay, so let's see. We'll just close with this final question. And I think you guys can all have something different to share, but do you have what's been really hard growing up? What is something that's really hard or an area of your life where you feel like your faith will constantly be tested in? Because, as adults now, your faith is not your parents' faith. Like I'm pretty sure you guys are independently making your commitments to worship God on Sundays and, serve the Lord. I don't think that's your parents telling you to do that anymore. It's like your own commitment. And I think with that comes your own share of trials that you're going to have to go through that, it'll just be between you and the Lord. So, what are some of the things that are challenging in your 20s?
I think the top two that I can think of, I mean, like, there's so many trials and so many things to learn, which is fine because it's called sanctification for a reason. Um, but I think the top two is one is related to like work or what I shared before. It's like that fear of man is always going to be a trial, at least I think for me. I think it's very difficult to not think about what other people think about me, whether it be like
Mm.
at work, it could be like, oh, my successes or my failures, the quality of my work.
Yep.
Or it could easily be also like how what do they think of me as a Christian? Like
Mm.
knowing that I live my life going to church on Sundays and serving on Fridays and not cussing at work or like not
Mhm.
using vulgar language or doing things with integrity. I mean, like my company is very integrity us has a lot of integrity. So it's not like they're doing sus stuff. But like just I don't know, like I think there's a lot of something I think about like a lot of the time is will people think that I'm less committed to work because I am a Christian? Or how does my work, because we know as Christians in the workforce, we are to be a light to other people.
Mhm.
How does my work reflect my faith? I think
Mm.
there's somewhat of a correlation because all my coworkers see is my work and they also see the way I live.
Mm.
So I sometimes like have that thought of like, oh, if I do something bad, will they think that like, oh, it's because she's Christian or like, oh, I know it's stupid now that I'm saying it out loud. Like they wouldn't think like, oh, you're Christian, so you didn't do well, so Christians suck.
Mm.
Of course, they're not going to think that, but I think part of me does think like, if I didn't pass or if I didn't do this, do they think I'm like do they think Christianity is like this? Because I am supposedly an example of Christ to others
Mm.
around me. And maybe it's all in my head. Maybe. I don't know. Fear of man. Bam. You know? Um but that's one of them. And I think the other one is just simply trusting God with what is to come. I think your 20s, people say is the prime time of your life. And I'm like, okay, cool. But like, there's so many things that happen that you needed a lot of decisions and choices that you have to make in your 20s. Like Jacey
Mhm.
was saying, your job or like Ashley with like her future plans. There's just a lot of decisions. And I'm so bad at making decisions. I'm like, I can't choose. Like literally, we were talking about this in premarital. John was like, I need to give Char like A, B, C, or else she'll do A, B, C all the way to Z. Like I just can't make a decision. Um, so I think simply just trusting that whatever decision I make may not necessarily be the right choice, but it is the right choice in terms of God's plan for me. And even if I make a supposedly like wrong choice, then that's part of like my life lesson, like I grow from it and life just continues on. There's no right path to, I don't know, the end of life. So I think just simply trusting that, you know what, I make a decision, but the rest is up to God. And if whatever happens in the future, I don't have to think so far ahead, you know? So yeah.
These are some good discussion. Yeah, fear of man. Ugh, hate the fear of man. And it can follow you for life, but God is good. No, God is good. Like, I think as you mature, like you'll still experience new freedoms from like man's opinions or man's whatever disapproval, if that's what you're scared of, or disappointments. But yeah, no, I think I like that you talked about your thoughts about being a witness in the working world. And I do think that actions speak really loudly in the workforce, and your conduct and the way your behavior is says a lot because it's foreign to like a fallen world, like characteristics of Christ and godliness. So yeah, I'm just glad that we're talking about this. Um, and let's see, the second thing you talked about was trusting God with these transitions and, the pressure you feel to make important decisions. And I think making decisions is a very, very necessary life skill. Like you just make so many decisions in adulthood. And what's scary is like when you get married and then you start having kids, you start making decisions for other people. Like that, how scary. Something as small as like what should I feed my husband? That's the decision, you know?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I'm like, oh, I have to cook the way that my mom cooks, so then we're all
Yeah.
healthy. What happens if I feed John something poisonous and he dies?
No, so it's good. It's good to start thinking, oh, Lord, give me wisdom. And some decisions you don't really need wisdom. Like I think food, just be healthy. But you know, there's this whole aspect of decision making is why we ask God for wisdom. That becomes like our constant prayer. Wisdom, wisdom. All right, those are good discussions. Okay, how about you guys?
I think on the topic of work, I realize like also like how hard it is sometimes like for me to even be a witness in just my speech as well. And just like how much that has an impact because I was even thinking this week like, oh, when should I just be quiet and like not complain? When should I because I think it's just so easy and in just the secular world, that's what people do. People like gossip, people enjoy just complaining about work and everything. But
Mm-hmm.
just trying to be set apart and just like not partaking in those conversations, it's hard. But I think that's like also a struggle of like self control with my speech. I think like in aspects of also um, like what I would struggle or like trials um, is also, I guess, just trusting God in His timing.
Mm.
Because I think it's easy for me to get caught up in just being so busy as well and just making so many plans and just wanting to do everything. But even just trusting that if I don't do something, um, I can still trust God in the ways that He will work in my life and the course that it'll take. So yeah, even since I can't plan 5, 10 years ahead, I think like even in high school where or even entire life, there's like a timeline of everything of like, oh, at this age you're supposed to go to high school, at this age you're supposed to go to
Mm-hmm.
college. And
Mm-hmm.
then after it's like, oh, you're supposed to go find a job. And then after that, you can write the rest of your life or make all those decisions like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
how Shar was talking about just decision making as well. Um, but I think just to also not be too occupied with every all these plans and everything, but just to learning how to like even earlier how to rest and how to spend time with God just in His Word and just learning that that's okay and it's not something that I have to be productive all the time. Rest is also good, and just being able to meditate on the word and just reflect is also good, even if it might seem less productive or there's no output from it. So I think that's something that I'm learning and just holding on to, and yeah, just enjoying just even like the simple joys of life and not having to have something constantly that's big or something apparent that I'm doing in my life. So.
Mm. Yeah, those are good thoughts. Thanks for sharing. I think that everyone can probably relate to work gossip and just generally like people grumble and complain when work is hard or you have, you know, a boss that you don't like or coworkers that you don't like. It's easy to have that work culture. But yeah, just I appreciate that you have the desire to practice self-control with your speech, and that in itself is a really good witness of God's spirit, self-control.
It is
And
hard though.
I know, but you know, I think this is why like people in the working world, like they have no if they don't read the Bible or go to church, then their first access would be like a believer, you know, and the Spirit of God lives in the believers. And I think they're really amazed to see that such people exist, that, you know, you have clean speech patterns, you know, no potty mouth and just self control. It's a really, really important attribute of Christ. And I think the other thing you talked about, trusting God's timing. And I was thinking about like my 20s and I think the people who are really blessed are the ones who are very thankful and content with whatever God gives them at that time. Because I know it's just easy to long for the next big thing or all of the big things. And I think the ones who are joyful and content, those are the ones that really know the gifts that God's given them. They know how to cherish those things. And so yeah, it'll be good. God has plenty of grace to give for those transitions. So all right, Ashley, we'll close with you. What do you want to share about faith or trials and hardships?
Um, I think like Shar said, just thinking about it, there's so many things I could probably mention just because there's so many things that are going on. But I think like the top big thing that I think just has been residing was probably kind of like what they all mentioned already, like the idea of like um trusting God, but in the aspect that um there's a purpose and reason behind like everything and where I'm at in life. I think just thinking through it and just even this past semester, I think a lot of times there's hard times where I would not only question God, but I think just um kind of fail to like know that like God put me through these things for a reason.
Mm,
Um, but I think what also comes into impact is the idea of kind of being influenced by other people. Um, More specifically, like I think a lot of things pertaining to a lot of hardships is just thinking about the people that I'm surrounded at school, especially just so many people, or the 30 people that I'm in my nursing program with. Obviously they all stand in their own faith, but I think like the closest people that I've grown with, there's a few of them who sometimes kind of have an influence on me in terms of like really learning how to like love them and trust that like God is still growing them because there's so many things that I think they understand that like oh God they know that like God is set in life is like oh I know that I want to do this after I graduate and everything, but I think sometimes for me I feel like because I don't think that far ahead and trying to like talk things out with them and not necessarily showing them love and knowing that like God has like a plan for every single person and learning that everyone is not on the same page in life. And so whether that be like um, kind of like trusting that I'm in a place in a state where God has placed me because he knows that I can't get through everything is probably like one of the hardest things. Just because nursing school is not easy, and sometimes having people who might bring me down makes things a lot harder to kind of turn my focus back onto God. Because although I do go to Christian university and everything, there are definitely ways that I can tell that people are not truly like Christians that they call themselves. And so trying to be the witness and like the Christian that I want to be and showing them love has also just been an influence. I think just right now in life, just trying to navigate through all those.
mm. Wow. Well, I appreciate that you guys are sharing just so personally. I think that it's really great insight to know what's really going on if it's been many years for me. I can say though from experience that even if you don't know what the next step is, I don't think God really expects us to know his 5-year plan. I don't think he shows us what those plans are. Sometimes it's just like the next baby step. And I think faith and trust really will go a long way, especially when different hardships and trials come or uncertainties. Um, you really start to ask for the spiritual resources But with that said, I just wanted to reiterate that you guys are still in a unique life stage where you have a lot of time, you have a lot of resources, you have a lot of strength, you still have a lot of energy. And your 20s, I would say it is a peak. It is a physical peak. And when you get into your 30s, you just won't have that anymore. And so enjoy it because it doesn't last forever. And I think that it's really exciting. I know God really has all these details ordained and prepared for you, and it'll be good and exciting. And the most important thing I'm really encouraged by is that you guys are taking your faith seriously and personally, and that will carry you a long way in your 20s. All right, I think we'll just end our discussion here. And I thought we talked about a lot of good things. We could keep going, but we'll just end here tonight. So I just want to thank you guys again for joining me, and maybe there'll be another episode with young people.